And greetings, casual citizens, and welcome back from the long abyss. It's been, what, 2 years? I think since
We were
been...
thinking about what to say.
Yeah, it just took a long time. All the way from Picard season 1, episode 2 to now. That's what
Did
happened.
we have a vote on casual citizens? I feel like that. I do remember that now. Yes.
Greetings, casual. Yeah, that's what we always said.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we said that. Right? Right? I don't know. It's been a minute.
All right. So
the world changed a little bit in that amount of time, if you recall.
Yeah. Oh.
Some things happened. It was wild. What a wild 2 years it's been.
Yeah, really not worth mentioning. So, Picard
season 2 happened. That was the thing that happened.
When I was a little boy, I was really excited when Q was on the Next Generation episode. And I even read a book one time where Q showed up and it was cool. But something was I didn't love this one. What did you think about Q?
Well, okay. I feel like Q in the show was better than the show itself. I feel like I could say that about the best thing about all of Picard, especially season 2, was the characters. Everything else was terrible, but the characters were all good. I like Raffi. I like Seven. I like Rios. Girardi I thought was better in season 2 than season 1. And I like
the Borg Queen.
Well, yeah. Oh, I did like the Borg Queen, yeah. Man, the story was not good. But in terms of Q, I liked Q, and I like this. I felt like he did a good job of what's the word? Portraying a sense of something was not right. You know what I'm saying? Like clearly he was struggling with things, right?
I guess. I mean, I just think you're noticing that whoever the guy is who plays Q is like a really earnest actor. I liked the intensity with which he played it, and yes. I was sold that he was really some weird godlike thing for a bit, but then at the end, what was his motivation? He was dying, and he wanted to. Why was he doing this, Picard? To show him that he could love again. That was what this was about.
Again, it's nebulous. I mean, it was basically, as I think there was two things. One, to help him reconcile this thing in his past, I guess, with his mom.
His mother hanged herself.
Hanged, yes.
Hanged herself.
Yeah, to reconcile this thing with his past and with his mom and his dad, and his brother, who apparently just was not there for any of it. But it's okay; it doesn't matter. And then also I think there was a sense of yes, wanting him to learn how to open up to people and to love again, like to Laris or something like that. But it would have been more interesting because there's always been
let's get this out of the way. Explain this to me, because I kept saying if this works out, this Picard series, I'll learn what in the world was going on with Laris as a human thing. What was that? What was she? She disappears because she was killed in a revolution on Romulus, and then she shows up as a guardian?
So no, it's two different people.
Right, I get that.
Yeah. So the was her name? Talon, I think was her name, something like that. She was the guardian, and it's a reference to an old episode of the original series. I forget what the name of it was, but it was a backdoor pilot. It was I think it was in season 2, where Gene Roddenberry thought Star Trek was going to get canceled after season 2, which it almost did. And so he created this whole episode, and this thing they used to do all the way up through the 90s, where I remember there's an episode of do you ever remember that show Empty Nest that was on in the early 90s?
No.
And it's about a guy who was a doctor or something like that, and his kids are all left and everything like that, and him living by himself, something like that. Anyway, there's a whole
great.
Well, yeah, whatever. It was a 90s sitcom, right? But there's a whole episode of The Golden Girls where he was their neighbor living next door, and it just follows him. And it was one of those things they used to do this where if they wanted to pilot a new show, they would just make an episode of another show.
Oh, right.
That followed these totally different characters, and then it would spin off into its own show, right?
Mary Tyler Moore and Rhonda or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Right? And so anyway, there was an episode of Star Trek TOS, season 2, I think it was, where he did this. He created this character called Gary Seven, and he was what was called a guardian. And his whole thing was he stayed on Earth and he protected the timeline and protected humans so that they would continue to go down the right path and do the right kind of thing. And the idea was it was going to be this series. I forget what it was going to be called, like Destination Earth or something like that, where like the series would be each week it would be like, oh, he's protecting this human from fucking something up or something like that, right? And he's just like a guardian angel kind of thing. And so there was a whole episode of TOS where they just followed this guy named Gary Seven on Earth in the 1960s. And so that's what she was. She was one of those guardians that was assigned to Earth. Except for, so what she says is some of us are assigned to like planets or like places, right? I don't know, maybe like the United States or something like that, right? But some of us are assigned to just people. And apparently she was assigned to Renee Picard for whatever reason. Well, I guess because
why is she Laris? I know I kind of got that, but why is she Laris? Or Talon,
so that's the thing. So the idea with these guardians is that the people that were guardians were essentially people that were abducted by the super advanced alien race, and they were brought up or programmed or I don't know, something like that to become guardians, and they would be sent back to their home planet, right? So like Gary Seven was a human who was, I don't know if like he was abducted or like his family was abducted and he was grown or something like that, like born and raised by these aliens and then sent back to Earth to be a guardian. And so obviously Talon as a Romulan, so she's not a human, right? We find out in the finale, like, oh, she's actually is Romulan, right? Or I don't know, it was like episode 7 or 8 or something like that.
Do we find this out by her just exposing her ears?
Yes.
Which without explanation? Is that what happened?
Yes.
So we don't know what it was. I don't know what that was. I remember thinking, what is this?
It's like a cloak force field kind of thing. So that's what she used. So that was them trying to do foreshadowing by that's how she looked like Renee Picard in the finale. Was she used that same technology she used to cover her ears to change her face, and it's like a digital mask kind of thing.
I thought she didn't have ear. Like I thought she wasn't Romulan the whole time. Just like she was just in like a human, vaguely shaped like Laris, like vaguely shaped like Laris. For no reason.
Well, and so Picard says that apparently she must be like an ancestor, like a distant ancestor of
right. And so I figured that must make her human or something. Like maybe she had
no, she's Romulan
ancestry. Okay.
Because there's a whole thing where she
sailed
says
over my head.
Well, because because so much happened in the finale. So there's a line where she says that, oh yeah, we're usually assigned to the planet that we came from, right? Like that thing I was just talking about. And so, but she was assigned to Earth instead of Romulus for whatever reason. They don't explain why. And so and Picard then says like, oh, so you must be a distant relative or different ancestor of Laris or something like that. And it's like, because apparently everybody in Star Trek, right? Like all your relatives look the same.
Oh my god!
Which is why there's like 15 Soongs that all look exactly like Brent Spiner.
I hated what Brent Spiner was doing. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. It was
It made no sense.
I mean, I made some sense. Why am I doing that? And
the best part,
doesn't he get to see like juked at the end? Like they just dodge him basically.
Oh yeah, basically. I mean, it happens multiple times. Like he tries to run over Renee Picard, and he ends up hitting Jean-Luc instead.
Yeah, the story just jukes him, and he's just like, okay, he's off. Well, he's just gonna have to deal with that emotionally, and we're moving on.
Yeah, because at the end, he tries to he tries to stop Renee, and he poisons her, but he ends up poisoning Talon instead, right? Because she put on the digital Renee face, and so that's why Talon dies. But then as a backup, he has the drones, right? He's sending those drones out. But then Rios and Seven and Raffi, they just crash one into each other. And so
you don't get to tell me that you invented like human cloning technology or whatever he did, and or that he's competent in some way, and then consistently show him being incompetent. You know what I mean? He's
But
just
he starts to
consistently
use it for it.
tricked.
He creates Khan. Didn't you notice that?
I know, but he competently creates Khan.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
But the best part, we passed over this. So we talk about relatives that look like each other, right? So we talk about Soon, we talk about talent. The best part, right? Guess who? Guess who's back? Issa Briones, Soji. Except for now she's his daughter.
I didn't like it. I thought it was silly.
Terrible. So his great grandson makes an android that looks exactly like this daughter of his great grandfather that he never knew about.
Well, she becomes the default template for like what people look like for the robot faces and stuff, right? So that's why she looks like that. Presumably.
Well, no, because there are only 3 of her.
I understand, but like Soong in the past must have saved the template for what she looked like and made it default. And so whoever Soji's creator, like Brendan,
Alton.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
also
yeah.
terrible.
But anyway, it was like based on one of Data's like parts or something, right? And so maybe he had access to some files for the like manufacturing the body of Soji, and you just use the same template as what Soong had on file for default.
I don't know. Sure.
That's why I took it as that immediately.
It makes as much sense as anything else that actually happened in the show. So
that was my reasoning immediately when I saw it. I was like, okay, well it must be that they use her as a template for what other people look like. Since there's
but then why didn't why didn't Data Lauren before look like that? Right. So
I don't want to waste another moment on this. I hate it.
It was terrible. But no, the best part was, right, she goes off and becomes a traveler with Wesley Crusher. Because that makes sense.
Wesley. Remember that book I read ages ago? Wesley was in it.
Yeah. Wow.
I can't remember the name of this Star Trek, but here's what happened in it. There was like a black hole that just like showed up in the galaxy. It was like eating stars. Like it was just like a big one. And it was they had to like figure out the mechanism that was the machine that was doing it. They had to communicate with it. It was an AI, and apparently it was engaged in a art project. Like it was doing it to multiple galaxies so that no one could. Yeah, because it's kind of cool because galaxies are spinning away from each other, right? And they're going to be so distant at some point you won't be able to see each other. But so in order to it's like a massive breach of first contact protocol, right? Because what they're doing is they're making like all the galaxies have this feature that has like it is obviously artificial, right? You look at all of them, they make a pattern, right? The different galaxies that they've consumed into this weird blob. So if you can look at them all, you can see the pattern. Oh, that must be artificial, right? It's got some rational feature to it. And so it's like proof to anyone who can see it, who can build a telescope, that there's life out there. So I thought that was kind of neat. And Wesley Crusher's in it, and he tries to stop them. He figures out how to stop them. Anyway, that's what that was about. So I like Wesley Crusher, and I knew about the Traveler because of this book. That's what this moment was about.
Well, the Traveler is from TNG as well.
I understand. That's where I'm just saying. I didn't see that TNG episode. I did see, or I don't remember seeing it anyways. But I was introduced to him as the Traveler in that book.
Because there was that one episode, and so there are 2 episodes of the Traveler. One is an episode or season 1, I think. It's where they bring this guy. He's like a Starfleet warp engineer kind of guy, and he comes on board the Enterprise. And is like, hey, I developed this methodology to make this thing go super fast, right? And we're increasing the warp factor by 11-fold or whatever it is, right? And so when he has this assistant, which is his alien that nobody knows anything about, and when they do these tests, the alien like puts his hands on the console in engineering, and all of a sudden they travel like halfway across the galaxy, right? Or something, and maybe they even go outside of the galaxy. I don't remember. And anyway, it's just crazy. And then throughout the episode, they find out like, oh, he's actually this warp guy, this Starfleet guy. He's like making all this up. He doesn't actually know anything. It's just he found this alien who has the ability to do this, to travel like this, right? And so he basically hooks him into the warp drive and makes him go super far. And then he takes credit for it, the Starfleet guy. And then we find out there's actually this alien. His name is Traveler. And like I said, this whole thing that he does. And he says, he's talking about Wesley Crusher. And it's like, Wesley has potential. Because remember season 1, TNG, Wesley was like the savant, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that's that happens that episode, and then basically then you fast forward to season 7 where Wesley leaves the show, and it's because the Traveler comes back. So hey, I said you had potential. You want to come be a Traveler with us? And Wesley goes, okay, sure. And then he leaves and goes be a Traveler, and then we never see him again until
You see
Star
him in
Trek
that book?
Nemesis. Well, in the book, and then Star Trek Nemesis, he shows up at Riker and Troy's wedding, and then doesn't even have a line. Doesn't even have a line. You
Oh,
just
is
see him
he in
sitting
the
at the table.
movie?
Oh yeah, you just see him sitting at the
I
table.
didn't realize.
Yeah, he's sitting at the end of the table in the opening scene of Star Trek Nemesis. Doesn't even have a
Good for
line.
good for them.
Yeah, but he has more lines in the finale of Picard season 2 than he had in Star Trek Nemesis. So
I don't. I think of this series as in the same way that I do Justice League. It just feels
the
like
movie or the comic?
the movie.
Oh, okay.
It feels like
The Zack Snyder version or the not or the
no, kind of either, but the
okay.
original, the one that aired in the movies, like it just feels like a collection of YouTube clips.
Yeah.
This whole series feels like a collection of YouTube clips.
Yes. They're
I
episodes
don't know
don't
what
seem to have anything to do with each other.
scenes in the last episode especially seem to have nothing to do with each other.
Yes.
I wish I could give you guys some examples, but it has been a minute since I've seen it. Just take my word for it. Don't watch it.
It's not good.
I don't watch this show.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I know, but like then again, you should watch it because then you won't know what we're talking about. But
For sure.
I don't know.
But I mean,
if you have literally anything else to do, don't.
Oh yeah. The worst part was I remember when we were talking about this when Picard was happening and you were watching it, and because you didn't watch Prodigy, right?
No.
And I kept telling you should watch Prodigy. It's because you're talking about, because obviously you have a lot going on these days, so you're talking about, oh, you don't have time, you gotta be judicious about it, and I was like, I understand that, but Prodigy is half as long as Picard, and it's easily more than 2 times better. I mean, it's not even close. It's 10 times better than the show.
I don't know. It wouldn't be hard. It was, yeah. Anyway.
So my recommendation for people, if you're thinking about watching Picard or Prodigy, watch Prodigy.
Do or watch Picard while you're playing Elden Ring. Just have it on the background. It's fine.
You won't miss much.
Yeah.
And if you do, it won't matter by the next episode, so don't worry about it.
And you'll be playing Elden Ring.
Yeah.
So.
No, but to go back to your question about how do I feel about Q, I watched a review by Steve Shives, right, and he brought up a good point about how like in the finale, the moment that you have between Picard and Q, and Patrick Stewart's talked a lot about how there's always been this subtext of like Picard and Q being like in love with each other, right?
That's news to me.
Well, because it was Berman Trek, and so like it was always stuff like it was always subtext, right? And
I thought he was just being cute. I thought he was just being like, I don't know, provocative. It's fine. It doesn't bother me. I just never noticed it.
Well, and so, but I mean, because there's like the scene where like, well, I mean, there's several things, obviously like Q shows up like naked when he gets turned into human and stuff like that. But
yeah, and I always thought that was more of like, I thought they were always trying to make Q seem a little Caligula, like,
goofy,
right? Like this, well, like a Roman emperor, like he could just do whatever he wants, so he could be naked. Like it's
sure.
just
no, but there was the big one.
Out.
Well, I didn't even hear what you said.
I said the F word. Beep it out.
Who cares? We'll do
That's fine.
We'll kitchen. Yeah. I don't think you could hear that, but there's a little beep in there. But no, there was the one also episode where Picard was on vacation and Q shows up, and he shows up in Picard's bed. So when Picard wakes up, he looks over and Q's laying in bed next to him. Right, that's the one people always talk about.
Oh, who cares? If I did that to you, would you think that it was like subtext? It would be clearly like a joke gone wrong.
No, but anyway, there's a quote from Patrick Stewart in an interview where he intimates that like, yeah, Picard's probably been bisexual or something like that. And I'd have to find it, but he's talking about Q being like, having this particular affinity for Picard and stuff like that, and that
he has a wife. I understand that you can be gay and have a wife. I get it, but like I find
you can be bisexual.
Sure,
I won't say for this bi erasure.
That's fair. That's fair. I find this connection between his behavior on TNG and him being bisexual toxic. I don't know, like toxic masculinity is what it makes me think of. It's like you're not allowed to be at all
Oh, just
effeminate
yeah,
around your guy friend. Like you
yeah,
can't
sure.
be silly, and it means he must want to bang him.
Well,
What? That's
and
what this means. That's silly. I
so
don't
so you gotta
know.
understand. So this is a big thing in Star Trek, and
I've watched a lot of Q episodes of TNG, and I have
but
never picked up on it.
well, okay, but you gotta understand too that this is a big thing in Star Trek because for two reasons. One is because Star Trek, for all of its progressive ideals, until recently, didn't show homosexuality on screen a lot, right? And
They
so
got around to it.
they got around to it, but
I'm
way
kidding.
too
I'm
late.
kidding.
But no, but so there's always been so you gotta understand too the idea of shipping characters, right? And fanfic started with Star Trek. It started with Spock and Kirk, right?
Uh, yeah, I have heard about that.
And if you watch TOS, actually, there's a lot of subtext actually in TOS for Spock and Kirk having a relationship together. And it's
I'm not that familiar with TOS, so
I know. I just give you an example. There's this scene where Kirk is on the bridge, and hold on a second. My cat is just losing her mind right now. She just knocks stuff over everywhere, and excellent. You can hear it crashing in the background. Excellent. Anyway, so there's this scene in Star Trek in TOS where Kirk is basically he's sitting in the captain's chair and it's like something wrong with his back. So he's like, oh, I got this. And Spock is standing next to him. He's like, I've got this crick in my back, Mr. Spock, or something like that. And he's like kind of massaging it, in the small of his back. And then a yeoman is standing there because it was TOS back when they had yeoman, right?
yeah.
And she's standing behind him. So she starts massaging it, right? The small of his back. And Spock is standing behind him on the other side. And so while she's massaging, he was like, yes, yeah, that's good. That's good. Get in there. Get in there, Mr. Spock. And then he looks over at Spock and Spock is not doing it. And so he looks over to his left and sees Yeoman. He's like, oh, that'll be all, Yeoman. And then him and Spock just kind of look at each other and give each other like a wink. And then like she just walks off and you're like, what the fuck just happened? And so
I guess, yeah,
So-
I guess I thought that was like a weird. I would have thought that was just a weird thing that they did as friends. I don't know. Like,
no, anyway, if you watch TOS, there's a lot of subtext about it.
okay,
And
I can believe it. I can believe it.
it's so much that like actually like Roddenberry like actually references it in one of the books or something that he wrote. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. So because of that, so Star Trek was the original of the fanfic genre. It started with Kirk and Spock and the Spurk relationship. And so it has become a theme of Star Trek that people just ship people, especially LGBTQ relationships, because the idea is that's actually what saved Star Trek, because that community that shipped Spock and Kirk, that's what led to TOS remaining relevant in the 70s, that got it to be the reboot, which started with the movie.
I didn't know that.
So that's why it's a big part of Star Trek culture, basically.
Oh, well, that's neat.
So that's why there's a lot of shipping that happens in Star Trek community. And
I'm on board with that, and I'm also on board with Q being bi or whatever.
Sure. Well, he's a god.
but-
He can be whatever he wants to be.
Yeah, but also I didn't see anything from his behavior on TNG ever that made me think, oh yeah, he's clearly not straight.
Well, anyway, doesn't matter. But the point is, obviously he has a thing for Picard, right? He has some kind of, well, I mean, he says it in the finale, right? Even gods have their favorites, right? And but Steve Shives mentioned this in an interview that like that final scene in the finale between Picard and Q is actually really good and really interesting, and follows up on
Why?
Well, it's kind of overly sweet, but it is kind of a nice finale for their relationship, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Of clearly Q has a favorite in Picard, right?
It's nice in that it is final, I suppose.
Sure. But it's kind of a sweet thing. But his point was you had to have watched all of TNG for it to be that way. Because nothing from this show, from these 10 episodes, justifies that scene. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Because they barely interact in the whole season.
Right. Yeah. And even knowing the relationship as I know it, and I do know it, it I
Yeah, it didn't feel super earned.
no
So
no
like
and
it was sweet on its own, but it was it's you needed to earn it. You didn't do nearly enough in this show to earn it.
I didn't like anything about it. I didn't like that he was dying. I didn't. I mean, somehow I don't want to go into what they should have done. I just know that in TNG, whenever Q would show up, they would like have him create a problem, and then they would go about fixing it. And didn't have to be because Q was dying, and that's why he was doing crazy stuff. He would show up and do crazy stuff,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
sometimes he'd have like a motive, and it's fine. But like, it wasn't. It doesn't. It just we didn't have to do all this stuff about the Q. Every moment they wasted on explaining to me that Q was dying and what that would be like, and that weird bottle breaking with Guinan, like all of that stuff. What was it for? We can do Q. We know how to
well,
do Q.
so so two things. The bottle breaking with Guinan thing was a reference to what happened in TNG, which is the first time Q meets Guinan. He's like clearly somewhat afraid of her.
I remember that. No, no,
Yeah,
no.
but you never.
The bottle breaking was because they tried to she tried to contact the Q, and it something's wrong with the continuum, and that's why it
Right.
broke. She
Well,
was surprised by it breaking. That's what it was about. I understand that she was scared of him and they put their
he was scared
claws,
of
like
her.
their fingers.
No, but what I'm
One of
saying
them
is
put their fingers out, like, oh yeah, she looked like she was going to shoot lightning at him. I remember.
no, but that's an attempt for them to put a backstory to this thing that was never explained in TNG. Like, why was Q, this omnipotent god, why did he react this way to Guinan?
I understand.
Right?
I understand this.
But it was like I didn't need it. You know, it was always kind of fun that we had this thing of like, what happened to them? I don't know.
No,
Just leave it a mystery. It's fun.
I still leaves it a mystery. I don't have a problem
sure.
with this. With adding a little more backstory, a little reference to it. Oh yeah, it really is a thing. We're not just retconning over it. That's fine. It was because he was dying. It was the part where the bottle breaks I don't like.
And this
it's like,
well, yeah, because his powers weren't like.
It's just dumb. Like, why she should contact him, and then she should be like, "Why are you bothering me?" Like, and then,
well, she tried to, but the thing is, because his powers, he couldn't get there. His powers.
That's dumb. That's what I'm telling you.
I agree. If you're gonna do a Q dying story, it was done better in Voyager. Like, there's an interesting way to do a Q dying story.
Yeah.
Where the Q tries to suicide, right? Because so it's the other Q, and then John Delancey Q has to come back, and he's like, no, we put him in prison, so he won't do this because no Q has ever died by suicide. And so the other Q, right?
Really, I love that episode.
It's a great episode. That's how you do a Q dying episode, not this. Because like, why is he dying? What happened? I don't know. Who knows?
And it wasn't even Q. Why do we get Q to die? It was a waste of my time. I didn't like it.
Well, and then
I'm fine with the guy in backstory stuff.
But if you're gonna do that, then like have him be in the show, right? Like he's there. It's what, episode 1 to talk menacingly to Picard and to slap him, which was kind of interesting, but it needed a payoff. It needed something more than at the final 10 minutes of the final episode to be like, oh, I'm dying and you're my favorite and I wanted to do this. Like, there needed to be something else.
You could easily achieve that by just having Q constantly be distracted by something else. Like, he's doing anything with Picard in the episode, he gets distracted. Like, and then we don't have to spend all this time explaining that he's dying and what that means and how it could possibly make sense. Like, so
yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, like, every scene that Q was in, I liked because John Delancey did well, but as a whole, there was not anything to justify why Q even needed to be part of this season. You know,
the
what
best
I'm saying?
part, yeah, I do. And the best part of Q this season was when Picard says, Q, you're not well. I thought that was just I found it a bit chilling, I'll admit.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it did nothing for me.
But then it never comes back, right? Like, we see him not have his powers to, a couple episodes later, but then, like, okay.
Okay, but you know what? You want to, what could have done this for me? The intensity with which it was happening. What if he had done something crazy? What if Q had, like, what he did was, like, he made a small change in a rocket launch and everybody's fascist in the future. Like, that's what he did. So what if, like, since he's going crazy, yeah, I got it. But, like, since he's, like, dying or whatever, like, why doesn't he, like, we should show him accidentally blowing up a star or something, just something nuts. And, like, oh, this has stakes when gods go mad and die. They don't do that. He just kind of does a vague trick. So
Well,
Eh.
and it's also like, what was the plan? I don't understand his plan. If he's trying to teach Picard a lesson or show him how to love or whatever his idea was, why create an alternate timeline? And that but then apparently then he didn't plan on Picard going back to the past, but then I guess he did because he also went back to the past.
Right. I was just thinking that.
It
Yeah,
made
he's not
no
a member
sense. I
of.
don't understand what the plan was.
Yeah.
It just
Anywho,
it's
so
I don't know.
so cute. You found the ending warm or heartfelt. I didn't even find
Well,
that.
I found
So
it to be like a nice thing, but yeah, I can understand why
I
you
get it.
wouldn't, especially if you just
Yeah.
watch the show. Like I said, there's nothing that should justify it.
Ooh.
So,
I mean, I've seen all the TNG Q episodes. I've seen all the Voyager Q episodes. I've seen all the
sure.
DS9 Q episodes. I just ugh. Eh.
There's only like what, one or
I think
two,
there's only
maybe?
one.
I think there's
I
only
think
one.
there might be two, but I think there's only one DS9.
Yeah, where Cisco
So
punches him. He was like, Picard never punched
he
me. He's
does.
like, I'm not Picard.
Um, the Borg.
Yeah, the Borg.
So fine. I thought it was like compelling in the beginning. I was like, oh, this is neat. They're gonna like they've reached out to Picard because he was Locutus, and that makes some sense. And last time we saw them was in Voyager, and they weren't doing so hot. So maybe things have gone bad for them, and now they're looking to make deals. I thought that was going to be cool. Is that kind of what you
Yeah.
thought this was headed? Is that what you thought?
I didn't really know at the beginning. I mean, so
They're
I mean,
in bad shape at the end of Voyager, right?
Do what?
They're in bad shape at the end of Voyager, right?
Oh yeah. So yeah, because future Admiral Janeway, she implanted a virus in the
Right.
Borg collective that killed the
And her
Queen,
leg-
basically.
Her leg falls off. I think I remember.
Yeah, like her whole body falls apart. It's not good. Yeah, she's not great. They all flip out, and then they destroy the transwarp hub.
Yeah, and now we have
So now they
technology
can't-
that can one-shot them.
Yeah.
Remember?
Well,
So that's what, yeah, because we got the armor and we got these transcendental torpedoes. It wasn't transcendental. But it was something.
yeah.
It wasn't transwarp either. It was something.
No, but it was something. Yeah.
Tritium? Something? I don't know.
I don't know. Titanium, unobtainium. Who
No.
knows?
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah. So we just one-shot 3 Borg ships or something. I remember.
Yeah.
It was. That's where we were. So I thought, yeah.
Which
they're in a bad-
presumably they bring forward with them, right, back from the Delta Quadrant, even though it's future technology.
Which they did bring.
Yes,
they definitely did bring.
Yes.
So it's like I thought the Picard were just the Borg were kind of like in a rut.
Yes.
And then we saw the relic or whatever was it called, the artifact in the last season.
Yeah, in season 1. Yeah.
Yes, it also kind of made me think, okay, the Borg aren't even like they're letting ships just hang out places.
Right.
So they must not be doing so hot. And so when they come asking for Locutus, I thought, they've come to deal.
Yeah.
So anyway, what did you think? Is that what you thought was going to happen?
I mean, I just wasn't sure. I guess I was not fully prepared for a Borg that was not menacing. And we haven't really had to deal much with that, right? Because we haven't seen the Borg really
menacing.
post Voyager.
Right. It was menacing until we saw of them.
Well,
you know what I mean?
So then the Borg Queen comes on board or whatever, but like her face is hidden. You're like, oh, this is clearly going to be somebody, right? But who is this, right? And then
it's stupid, but I know it's silly, but I really almost thought that maybe they couldn't get the actress for the Borg Queen.
Oh yeah,
and
which they didn't.
Right, and so they felt wrong doing it, so they just put her in a black mask. They should do that with Princess Leia moving forward.
Oh, they should just anyway. We'll talk about
Put her
Star
in a
Wars at some
mask.
point, but
Yeah.
anyway, they should just recast her. It's not a big deal, guys. I promise.
Okay, so more thoughts on Borg.
So, I mean, obviously, by the end, it turns out, right, that wasn't even the Borg, right? It was Girardi, and they're not the
Who
Borg.
is Borg? Is that the Borg?
They're not the Borg.
How are they not the Borg?
So Terry Matalas, who is the showrunner for seasons 2 and 3 of
Right.
Picard, he did an interview afterwards and
Yeah.
said that these are not the Borg. So
it's a
they
separate
haven't
collective.
retconned anything. It's an offshoot.
It's a
So
separate collective.
So
Got
she
it.
goes off, and it was unclear what happened in the show, right? So she takes the ship, the La Serena, but it's not even the prime timeline La Serena, right? It's the Confederate La Serena. But anyway, she takes that and she goes off, and I was like, okay, so she jumping into the future now, right, with their ship? Because obviously she can do that. She's the one that got them into the past, right? She can do the calculations to get them to do the
I'm there.
slingshot around the sun to go back to the future. So like, okay, so she go back to the future, or does she just go off and do Borg stuff for 400 years?
Borg stuff for 400 years, 100%.
Which is so apparently, or 300 years, I guess. But apparently, it's 400 years. So apparently that's what she did, and created this offshoot side Borg species that just don't do anything for 400 years, so they don't affect the timeline.
I like it.
That's the official explanation.
I'm fine with that getting that character like Girardi there. I hate it. Well, no, of course, with the mask and then the reveal, I'm there. And the way like the song was her message, I'm there. But I don't hate that they go back in time. I don't hate that the Borg Queen gets an idea in her head because she's not connected to the collective anymore, and then like she gets left in the past and does something weird, and then she shows up back at the beginning. All these devices are fine. I think that's kind of cool.
Well, can we talk about the logic though of having this offshoot Borg that are just existing this whole time, and that we just nobody sees them. They're just not affecting history.
We can't talk about it. Of course, we can't talk about it because it's not logical. It
makes no sense.
Foolish.
It makes no sense. And on top of that, why are they still only have that same level of technology when we see them? And right, because you imagine they go back to 2024 with 25th century technology, right?
And a Borg Queen who probably knows it all.
Who knows all that stuff, right? Yeah, because she was part of the collective. And then fast forward 400 years.
Yeah, you think about,
and they still have the same level of technology.
The thing about 400 years, Paul, even if the Borg Queen is just a middle manager or whatever, but even if she doesn't have all the technical knowledge for future technology, she has the knowledge of, did you know you can do this? I don't know how to do it, but it is doable. Like, if we had that now, we could make leaps and bounds probably.
Sure.
Just saying, I've seen it done. I know you can do this. This can be done, right?
Or you don't know all the technical, like, roughly speaking, there's something with dilithium and like, you can, there's this thing called cloaking device, and I think they use this, right?
You can torture one child, and then like it can destroy all that lithium everywhere.
Yes, apparently. Discovery crossover. But they have to be born in a dilithium supermine or something like that. But no, I think it just doesn't make any sense. And so can we also talk about the idea? So the whole thought, and by the way, they're not called the Borg either. They're called the Girardi. That's what they were called.
It's kind of cute.
That's okay. That's a word for it.
I really think the problem with the Borg thing is truly the ham-fisted delivery. Like, the reason we don't know it's Girardi in the beginning. Do you think you would feel differently if in the beginning Girardi had just showed up and they're like, "What the shit?
100%.
Why is Girardi?" You feel better or worse?
That would have been a lot better, 100%.
Exactly. That's all I'm saying. Like, I think the Borg stuff works sans this issue of coy deception.
But that's just going to show how bad the writing of the show is, right? Because then you set up an entirely different dynamic of, hey, we see Girardi, she's on the bridge, she's human, and all of a sudden this Borg person shows up and it's also Girardi, and you're like, what? And then you get a whole season to figure out, right? The end point. How do I get there, right? But they're not clever enough writers to be able to work out a clever way to get to an endpoint that you already know. So they just make it a mystery.
And it's not even a neat mystery.
And it's not even an interesting mystery.
It's Girardi. That's what it was.
Which the dumb part is,
you could make Girardi more interesting instantly by making her show up. Right? But now you do care.
But the worst part of it is they make it this mystery because they don't want to do the clever. The worst part of it is it's not even just that they're not clever enough to tell you the ending and then show you how to get there. The worst part of it is they don't tell you the ending, and they assume you're too stupid to know what it's going to happen. Because anybody who has half a brain is paying attention knows by the end of episode 2, Girardi's going to be that Borg Queen, right?
Yep.
And so, but they're just assuming you're not going to know that, so that the reveal is somehow interesting. But then it's not.
For kids. Maybe it's for kids. Maybe the reveal was for kids.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So, okay, Paul, what do the people say?
What do you mean? What people?
What are the people on the internet about Star Trek? You listen to the Star Trek people. What do they say
Picard,
about this?
season 2?
Yeah. No likey?
No. In general, it's not good. The reviews aren't great.
Well, it's well deserved. Well deserved.
But there's this thing that, yeah, I don't want to get too much into this, but there's this thing that sucks about Star Trek right now, which is where like a lot of the backlash to modern Star Trek is just stupid. And we talked about it when we did this um, with Discovery, and then the first couple episodes of Picard season 1, right? Where it's the whole, Star Wars had the same thing, right? The fandom menace, right? About they just didn't like things that changed, right? Especially, and that's why there's so much backlash to The Last Jedi.
Oh yeah.
And you got too much diversity with Rose and blah blah blah, and Star Trek Discovery went through the same thing with ridiculous backlash to Berman and Burnham. And
yeah, I'm totally there, and I need to speak to the people on this point. Is the perfect, before we get there, Lord of the Rings. The new series is coming out,
sure.
and the people, like the Black Elves is the perfect example of, I think, of what we're talking about, the backlash on that. I know it's not as big as the Star Trek thing probably yet, but old people like Lord of the Rings, and so it's gonna happen. So it's gonna be part of the what's the thing they're teaching in schools that they think is communism? Critical race theory. It's going to be the critical race theory of Star Trek when they have to deal with Black Elves. Now, I have a solution for everybody, Paul.
Okay.
I don't care if you make elves that are black. I don't care if you make Winston Churchill black. Don't talk about it. Just have a black man do it. Have a black woman do it. Whatever. Right? I don't need. So I know what's coming. I know what's coming for Lord of the Rings, and it's going to be an explanation to me as to why some elves are white and some elves are black. And I don't care. I don't care if they're white or black. Oh, I bet there is. I bet they're
good explanation.
You bet they won't do like they're elves from this side of the continent or something.
No, I mean they never did that in Star Trek, right?
They didn't do it in Star Trek. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, like when we start seeing like non-white Vulcans.
Well, the thing is that race is kind of tied in to some of Tolkien's stuff because it's geographical in nature, right? Like, so people are different colors from where they're from in the show, or sorry, in the book. So, and people are mad that that this is going to violate the canon, right? Because that canon is real. But who cares? Like, they are going to violate it, and we don't need to talk about it. Like, we don't need a reason. I never need an explanation for.
Well, it's just like
unless that person is in a setting where black people are disenfranchised, then maybe you say why a black person has this job. Fine, but other than that, I don't. I'm fine.
Like
I'll just roll with it. Enar.
The Andorians. That's the dude Hemmer from Strange New Worlds.
Oh yeah, which is fine, but that's a weird new thing, right?
No, that was an Enterprise. That's where they were introduced.
So like they introduced a weird, crazy thing.
We'll get in Enterprise, not in.
I remember.
I
remember on Ice Planet, and they're different colors, and I'm there.
Yeah, so the Enar are pale; they're not blue, and it's because they live underground and they're all blonde.
On the Ice Planet. Yeah, which is fine. They introduced a new thing. I'm talking about like backlash on diversity and stuff. Like, it just doesn't. I cannot get animated about this. I just wish people would stop getting animated about it. It doesn't matter.
Well, and so anyway, and I mean, anyway, to talk about the Vulcans, right? Like the real thing, if you think about it, is like all Vulcans should be dark skinned, right? Because they live on a desert planet, and and they have 2 suns, and that's what causes melanin, which causes people to have darker skin, right? Is long exposure to sun and warm weather.
Yeah, but you don't get as much sun close to the Vulcan Mediterranean. So some of them are white. So whatever.
Sure.
I don't care.
But anyway, the point is,
don't care. I don't care.
But the point is, right? So yeah. So I mean, I think
make a white Klingon. I don't care.
Well, I mean, we have Volk, right? He was albino Klingon.
Oh right.
In season 1,
right.
And then there's plenty of purple Klingons too. And then people, you better believe people had a fit about that because how dare you take away the blackface? That's racist. So anyway.
I never even thought about that. Oh, yeah. Dark. Anyway.
So anyway,
all right, I got nothing else for Picard. What do you got?
No. So we were talking about something, and I kind of forgot. We kind of got off, but about the Borg.
That's my fault.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I mean, my thing with it is, you were asking about how people feel about it, right? And so I was saying, so like if reviewers typically have been like, yeah, no, the show's not good. But there's this thing where a lot of criticism of newer Star Trek is just wrapped up in this. It's hard to separate it from just whiny babies complaining about having dark elves, right? Having black elves, right? Where it's just, they're complaining about Burnham, but not because Star Trek Discovery has writing issues. They're complaining about like, where are the straight white men, right? Because there's not a single straight white cis dude character on Discovery, right?
Oh
And
yeah. Oh, okay. Whatever. I didn't
right, I know
notice.
it's one of those things that like if you're us, like I had to think about it. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's the true,
I
right? I
mean,
didn't
I'm
even
not.
think about it.
I'm not lying that I didn't notice it was diverse on purpose. I
Sure,
did. I don't care.
right,
Like,
right.
okay, they did it for diversity.
Well,
Fine.
I mean, for me, I do care because it's like, if you want a cast full of straight white people, go watch any other Star Trek, right?
Oh,
Like,
let me be clear. I don't care enough to get in the way of it. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
I mean, I care in the sense that like I think it's a good thing, right? And in fact, my
Yeah.
thing, and I'll get to this in a second, but like my thing is modern Star Trek is not woke enough. It's token liberal woke in my opinion. Um, but I think So my point was that so much of the backlash is just that, which is like not really about what Star Trek is about. It's just about this reactionary culture war bullshit. And so because of that, a lot of fans are defensive about new Star Trek, right? And so the critics that are being honest, I think they look at it and they go, yeah, I don't like this show. And Steve Shives did a whole video about this, about how like when he came out with Picard season 2 and started doing his reviews, saying that he didn't like it, he got these people coming to him and saying like, yeah, finally someone who gets it. New Trek, Kurtzman Trek is terrible, and all that stuff. And he had this whole video about like, if you're agreeing with me that Star Trek Picard is bad, but you're agreeing with me because you think everything that Berman or that Kurtzman does is stupid, and you think there's too much diversity and all that stuff, then get the fuck out of my comments and stop watching my channel, right? It was like, if you think it's bad because the show has been poorly written, then yes, I would agree with you. But don't think just because I say it's bad, don't think I'm agreeing with you that it's bad for your stupid reasons, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I wouldn't call it dishonest. You were saying that the honest reviewers, as opposed to the bigoted ones, you can be bigoted and honest. They're honestly bigoted.
Well, they are honestly bigoted, sure. But I guess no. What I meant by the honest reviewers is like then there are other reviewers who they comment and then be like, oh, it has these problems, stuff like that, but like, I still like this. They always try to hedge because you don't want to be grouped in with these people who are just racist assholes, right? And
For
so
sure.
you're constantly hedging, and it's unfortunate. And especially I find myself as a cis white guy, mostly white guy, right? Myself, right? Obviously, I'm not fully white, but people perceive me as white, so that's the big thing that's important there. And as it's difficult for me to, I tend to hold back my criticisms, especially in places like Twitter and stuff like that, because I don't want to be grouped in with those people. And not just that, I don't want the people who like it to group me with those people. I don't want those people to group me in with them. You know what I'm saying?
Good. Oh yeah.
And so I just kind of don't say anything, which is unfortunate because I hate that because I like talking and I want to criticize the show. One, because it's bad, and two, because my criticism doesn't come from a place of hater. It comes from I love these guys. I grew up with TNG in particular, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
it
you've
hurts
done it,
me.
boy.
Do what?
You've done it, boy.
Well, no.
You said you wanted a chance to speak about it.
Well, yes, but because I come from a place of please do better. Like I watched the Red Letter Media review of Picard season 2. Reviews, they did multiple ones, and Red Letter Media they get a lot of flack for their reviews on modern Star Trek, and a lot of it I think is warranted. But I think they go too far, and I think it's anyway. But I think one of the things that one of the guys, I forget their names because I don't watch them regularly, but one of the things he said was that one of them said that he could kind of separate this and said, hey, the Star Trek that I had, TNG, whatever, that was my Star Trek, and this new stuff is something else. It's not for me, and I can just pretend it doesn't exist, right? And the other guy was like, I can't do that, right? And he was saying that like this show makes me like Picard less, and as much as I disagree with that guy on a lot of his views on modern Star Trek, and I do, I find myself in that position where season 1 I hated, season 2 I hated of Picard, and they make me like Picard as a character less, and that hurts, because it's somebody I grew up with, right? And it's a franchise I
Yeah.
grew up with. And I hate that they've done this for what should have been good reasons, but turned out to not be any good reasons, right? Like, people will complain about this Star Trek, and the Red Letter Media guys, they do this a lot. They complain about this. Well, this just isn't what Star Trek is, and it's, it's not. And I was like, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with Picard going off and let's telling this emotional story about Picard being, he's not at Starfleet anymore, and he's just at a different stage of his life. Of course, he's not going to act the same way that he did 30 years ago on TNG, right? I'm fine with that. If you're going to tell a good story out of it. What sucks is not that he's different. It sucks that he's different for no good reason. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
And that's what sucks about it. Because now I can still look at TNG Picard and be like, oh, it is what it is. And that's what that character was. But I look at this Picard now and I'm just like, I don't like this character in these shows. And not because he's more sensitive, not because of any of that stuff, but just because the stories that you gave him are just bad. You know what I'm saying? And they don't make sense.
I'm on board. Yep, bad show.
So anyway, that's where.
And it's not because we're bigoted. That's where we're at. So,
no. But
gonna have to.
Well, and in fact, so I alluded to this earlier, and I just want to go on this short little rant here. People will talk about, like I said, those people that complain about it talk about how, this wokeism is killing Star Trek. I would offer to you that the problem with Star Trek, especially Picard, is that it wasn't woke enough, right? And the best example of this is Rios, right? This show could not figure out what it wanted to do.
Oh yeah, that's funny. I hadn't thought about that.
It couldn't figure out it. It started out seeming like they were trying to make some kind of point. We've talked in the past about how, and actually, if you go back and listen to our Picard season 1, episodes 1 and 2 reviews, the last videos we did before the world ended, we had a debate in there about, was the show going to touch on these modern political themes, stuff like that, right? About rising fascism. And you were on the stance of like, oh, well, just because these things are happening doesn't mean it's commentary on modern times and it's allegory and blah, 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 right? But with Picard season 2, they go back to 2024. It very clearly is our times, right? There's no way to read it anything other than, and they make very obvious allusions. They see this homeless encampment right below, the Europa Space Center, right?
That was a foolish opinion of mine to have back then. So
Yes.
Obviously it's commentary.
Yes, and but I mean, like even if you think, okay,
I guess my expectation was that it would be more like TNG, and I just didn't find that in TNG. I was a kid, so I probably wasn't as glued in to political modern commentary of that time. Right. But I just never found that in it. The episode where
again, but DS9 was even more explicit about it. But anyway,
sure.
I mean, like they're called the Maquis, like that's an actual World War II resistance cell, right? So I mean, like. But anyway.
Well, I always assumed I knew that there were episodes that were commentary, but I like the major conflict in DS9 is between the Cardassians and the Bajorians, and it's like the Nazis and the Jews, but the Nazis didn't disappear, so they got to deal. Like that's an interesting. How do we deal with this, right?
But then also understand that then the Maquis was like the Israel-Palestine conflict, right?
I understand.
Right.
I understand. It's just that they were episodes here and there of it, and that's fine. I just my general consumption of Star Trek hasn't been that it was what was primarily trying to deliver to me was one coherent message, which. A little bit, it wasn't a bad message in Picard exactly. It was don't be fascist, don't call yourself the Confederacy. All these things are bad, and that was I'm fine with that commentary in general, and I get why it's irrelevant now. But it felt more targeted than I imagined, honestly.
Sure, but I mean, in this case, you really couldn't ignore it, right? Like I said, they go back to 2024, and it's our world, right? And they're talking about climate change, and they're talking about the homeless encampments, and they're talking about, I mean, he gets picked up by ICE, right? Like, I mean, come on, it's very blatant what they're doing.
Quite. I completely agree.
And Guinan has that line where she says, it's easy to wait for people that look like you. It's not so easy for people that look like me, right? She says Picard, and then she talks about how this century they traded in the hoods for the suits, right?
Yep.
And so they're making all these points. It seemed like that's where they're going, and then you fast forward like 2 episodes later, and they go fucking nowhere with it.
I'm
Right?
fine with that. I'm fine with that. I don't
I'm
need it to
not.
be.
I'm not. It's the problem. So like in Rios' best example, he's in an ICE concentration camp.
Mhm.
He gets tased by this asshole security guard, right?
Yep.
Watch this other dude get deported without due process, right? And then literally 2 episodes later, he's at this ball and he's like, "Oh man, the food's here, great." And then like 2 episodes later, he's like, "I'm just gonna stay here. This place is fucking awesome." And I'm like, "You were in a concentration camp 2 days ago."
Okay, I hear you. Here's the thing: they can't resolve it for you because we're not going to resolve it by 2025. So like, there's
But my
arc.
point is, what story were you? What point were you trying to make?
Well, and my point is, there isn't one that you could make because the
There
only way
is.
to
There
like
absolutely is. There absolutely is.
Okay.
They didn't have to do any of this stuff with Sung and all this stuff, and like, oh, it was this microbe or something that Renee Picard went to Europa
Yep.
and then came back, and that's what solved climate change and all that stuff. Ridiculous nonsense, right?
Right.
All it had to
Imagine
do,
if
all it had to do was you go back in the future and be like, hey, you know what? There's this person that rises to power, right? And because of this event that Q change or something like that, he comes to power and he's a fascist, right? And here's the commentary of this is the path that we're on right now with our planet, and unless something changes, this is where we're going to end up. We're going to end up the Confederacy, right? The modern version of the Terran Empire, right? And but we didn't, in Star Trek universe, we didn't go that way because that guy who was this fascist leader got defeated, right? He lost an election or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't steal an election or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But instead they make up this whole stupid story about time travel and this organism that cleaned the oceans and all that. Just what point are you trying to make? Like they didn't commit to it. They set up all these ideas of envisioning a future fascist world by going back in time to a point where we're all looking around and going, there's a lot of fascism happening in the world right now, and that's not good, right?
Right.
And this is the path we're on. And instead of committing to that, they touch on it and then just go, nope, never mind. It's going to be some, water, moon, space organism.
Yeah, because that's resolvable.
But it's dumb. It's sorry. It's scared. It's scared. It's just
and
a total lack of commitment.
I'm in agreement with you on that. I just don't think it's the category mistake of this project. Like, you could have kept all of it like as timid as they did it, and still fix like a lot of other things, and I'd have been fine with it. I'd be like, okay, yeah, some token liberal stuff, and moved on. So this the comment that it's not woke enough, and that's the problem. I don't know. I could leave it at token liberal, and it could still be a good show.
No. I guess what I'm saying is, yes, they still could have written a good show,
right,
with this plot thread, right? And they still could have written a bad show by going the other way, right?
Right.
But my point is, at least if they had written a bad show the other way, there would have at least been a kernel of an idea that you could have taken. In this one, you don't even have that. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair. It would have a saving grace. That's fine.
Yes. And this one is just, I got a stupid story that was poorly written versus I got an interesting story that was poorly written.
Oh, let's title the episode this: "A Bad Story Poorly Written."
Yes. And it sucks because there's so many good characters, right? I mean, I like Rios. I like Seven and Rafi. I like their relationship in this season. And it just went nowhere. It just felt useless. It felt worthless in the end. Elnor kind of didn't happen.
Oh yeah, I gave up.
Rios
it robbed it of any nostalgic weight. I couldn't even. I could watch. I remember I could kind of. There were some moments in the first season. I go, okay, some nostalgia's there for me.
Yeah.
There's nothing in it for this.
Well, the first couple of episodes I thought were good, and especially like episode 1, and especially, and I know you don't care as much about the stuff, but like, if you're the kind of person who cares a lot about ship designs and the cool, the visuals and stuff like that, there was some cool stuff to take from out of episode 1. And it was promising. I still think the first 2 episodes are actually pretty good, right? They end weird. Like they didn't seem to nail down where the end of one episode was and the start of the next episode. But to me, it was like episode 5. It was as soon as Rios gets broken out of the ice camp, the whole season just goes. And you know, here's a good example. Do you remember it was at the end of episode 5 and going, because episode 6 was the one where they go into the ball, right? And they have to infiltrate it.
Yes.
And at the end of episode 5, Picard is talking about it, about how we have to infiltrate this ball so we can get to Renee and, you know, talk to her about whatever, right? And he goes, and they're like, how do we get in there? And he goes, I have a plan. And they play this music and you're thinking like, oh, it's going to set up like a heist story, right? And I love heist stories. I love a good heist movie. You know, like Ocean's 11, you know, love these kinds of things, right? And so you go, oh, that's an interesting thing. I'm excited about that. And then they start episode 6. We get one scene where Girardi has to get them through security, right? By being arrested and then doing something with the Borg Queen and, you know, whatever. And then literally nothing happens. He, you know, because when you get a heist story and you hear someone say, I've got a plan, then you expect, what do you expect the next scene to be?
The assembling the team.
Assembling the team and explaining the plan, right?
Right.
And then the heist story is how the plan goes wrong and how you react to that, right?
Sure. Yes.
That's 101 how you do a heist story, right? Mm-hmm. We get none of that. He goes, I have a plan. You start the next episode. He doesn't explain the plan, doesn't assemble a team. The next episode starts, they just walk up to the ball. Girardi does something where she gets him in, and then they just kind of hang around and talk to each other for 40 minutes. And don't do anything. They don't accomplish anything. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
It's just so poorly written that it's just, why did you even do this? This could have been a 3-parter. This could have been a 2-part episode.
Yes.
That they stretched into 10 episodes.
Oh, that's an excellent way of thinking. Yes, it could easily been a 2-part TNG episode.
Yes.
I've been fine.
It would have been fine.
All right.
And instead they did 10 episodes of just nothing. And it's so disappointing. And I also have to say, and I'm going to get, you know, super woke and everything again on this too. The way they handled the mental health stuff was terrible. A lot of people were pointing out that they didn't put a trigger warning for the episode where they actually showed the suicide, which was not cool. They should have done that. Because if you're somebody who has gone through that before, either someone you know or attempted it yourself, it could be really distressing, right? And they didn't do that. They didn't handle the story well at all. I mean, it's baffling to me that it's set in the 24th century and they're still dealing with shit like the mom doesn't want to get help for her mental wellness because reasons. And then the answer is the dad locks her in her room.
Oh yeah, I never really thought about that. That's a good point.
It makes no sense.
I feel silly. I feel silly that I never noticed it. But yeah, that is incredibly obnoxious.
It's just gross. So it's just, and that was my point earlier about like, it's just, the show does these things like, where it touches on these ideas like, oh, we're going to talk about something that's relevant today, right? Mental health. And then handle it in just the most bullshit, stupid way I've ever seen. And then they did the same thing with, what's her name? Aphrodite, I don't know, whatever. the Soong's daughter, right? Where it's, you know, it's disability representation in Star Trek has been limited in the past. DS9 did a good episode about it. But overall it's, you know, not covered very well. And so now you have this character who her whole thing is, you know, she's got this condition that means she can't go outside the house, right?
Right.
And they did the worst thing possible, which is, so they could have actually used a person who had an actual condition, right? Used a real life condition and gotten an actor with an actual, you know, condition or disability or something like that.
Or they could have given the actress an actual condition. They could have
Yes.
they could have injured her in some way.
Sure.
Blinded her.
Yeah, for this anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, they could have done that and they didn't. They got this totally able-bodied person to portray a character whose only defining characteristic is having this condition, and then it magically gets fixed at the end, and that's when her real life begins, right? And it's so gross.
I'm on board.
And I just, and you know, we'll talk about Strange New World. Strange New World has a problem with this too, but it's just.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, but I'm interested to hear it.
Yeah, but anyway, so it's just, it's all these things that come together where it's just like you said, like, you know, it's a bad story. It was just badly written, and it's just, there's so many good ideas that could have happened and they just didn't, and it's really frustrating.
But we did it. We watched it. We reviewed it. Good on us. But
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah, don't
I
watch
remember
it.
unless you literally have nothing else to do.
I would say just rewatch TNG, rewatch DS9. Actually, that's the one you really need to
No, we
rewatch.
gotta get back. No. Watch it so you can listen to this and it makes sense.
Sure. Or just listen to us. Watch synopses and then listen to us tell you why it was so bad or something. Let's do that instead. There's just so much more better to do with your time.
Well, I'm glad to be back, and we'll do Strange New Worlds for our next episode.
Yes.
And we're doing a Kenobi thing. And then we're going to finish up each episode of Strange New Worlds as they come out.
Yes. That's the
Stay
idea.
tuned.
Anyway. All right. Well, anything else you have to say about Picard season 2?
Not a thing.
All right. Me neither. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this episode. Thanks everyone for joining. Like I said, in short, don't watch Picard, but yeah, we'll be back. And until next time, keep it casual, everyone. Bye.